Welcome back to the Press Club. We're talking about this idea of development journalism, a concept that came about, I think, in the 70s, where we basically take ownership of reporting our own issues because we are more familiar with what is going on the ground. This sort of bottom-up reporting. And I think that even in some of the cases where it is practiced or attempted here, we kind of get sidetracked by focusing on the problems, you know, rather than solutions. And I'm wondering how much that plays into our reporting of climate change, which is the big issue on the ground, heading up to COP21 in Paris in December. We had the launch this week of the James Fletcher-led initiative, Voices on and for Climate Change, Climate Justice. I think that was on Thursday
launched Pigeon Island.
No, actually it was launched at the Orchid Farm.
Oh, okay.
In Union. But we've touched on it before. The fact that climate change doesn't seem to be a sexy topic for local reporters. And even when we do report on it, we touch on it in the same way as I mentioned. We talk about what the problems are. We don't focus on the solutions.
No, that is absolutely so. Unfortunately, again, we do not see climate change as affecting us. We see it as a topic to be covered, an item to be covered. So we relate to climate change more in terms of reporting the effects, the negative effects of climate change. You know, increasing hurricanes, changing weather patterns, the consequences of those changes, etc. So as reporters, we wait to report what climate change does. But climate change as a phenomenon that doesn't go to sleep is an everyday story. And in other places, there are reporters and journalists who have dedicated themselves to climate change issues because they so understand it that on any one day
That's the point I want to make,
they can come up with 10 issues relating to climate change. So Dr. Fletcher, who has been re-elected or reappointed as the head of CARICOM ministerial and technical persons having to do with climate change, because St. Lucia has lead responsibility in CARICOM with Dr. Anthony as the lead prime minister to, you know, on things relating to climate change, environment, sustainable development, energy, etc. So Dr. Fletcher has that regional role, and unlike many others, he is committed to the issue, he's gone into it, and he's appreciated at the international level to the extent that he's being requested and invited to co-chair international gatherings, one on climate justice in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, about a month ago. This past week, he was in New York as one, representing St. Lucia as one of the only 3 countries attending the major economic powers forum. The thing they had to do again with climate change and its adaptation to how world economies look ahead. So that this initiative by him, which is regional and has international support, which is basically saying, let's get the press and the artists to write, talk, sing, act, perform, and find ways and means of introducing climate change issues to people in ways that they would not normally, people who will not pick up a book.
Because he makes a very interesting point there. I'm reading from the Mirror newspaper. He says, he underscored the critical nature of this phenomenal threat and beckoned civil society to take heed, since as momentous as the current economic crisis may seem, and I repeat that, since as momentous as the current economic crisis may seem, it pales in comparison to the threat on livelihoods posed by climate change.
Very much so. It pales in comparison because Dr. Fletcher represents St. Lucia on the Alliance of Small Island States. That is, all of the small island countries in the world have come together at the United Nations and established something called AOSIS, Alliance of Small Island States. And they are the leading body when it comes to, you refer to COP21, Conference of Parties. It's the 21st Conference of Parties due to take place in Paris, where all of the countries of the world that are part of the United Nations will be represented in Paris to decide on how the UN and the world approaches climate change. Now, St. Lucia and the Caribbean have a unique opportunity that most people haven't realized, and that is that Paris is the chairperson. Paris is chairman. But with Martinique as a member of the OECS, and Martinique belonging to France, it means that Martinique and the OECS are in the chairmanship for the very first time. And the enormous possibilities that opens is one where President Hollande has come to the Caribbean, went to Martinique, and they came up with the Martinique Declaration, in which St. Lucia, Martinique, the OECS, the French Antilles, and the wider English, French, Dutch, and Spanish-speaking Caribbean are going to Paris as one, with numbers, and saying to France and the larger countries that, listen, all your pledges, the whole question of climate justice is one where it is your emissions that is helping cause the climate change that is affecting us. So the issue of climate justice is one where we, the victims of climate change, need to be able to get climate justice from those who are responsible. So it's like it's the call by CARICOM for reparations, you know, for slavery. Slavery was implemented by and to the benefit of Europe. And therefore CARICOM is saying, listen, you, in terms of reparatory justice, you know, let's talk about what can be done to help us overcome the after effects. And therefore the climate justice one talks about the establishment of the Green Fund.
A good question was raised by Mr. Jeff Fede in his article in the Mirror today, the Climate Change Conference held in St. Lucia. I have some issues with that article generally, but there's an important point that he makes there, asking, you know, how good a chance do we stand as small island developing states most affected by climate change in convincing these developed countries to change their methods of operation and to implement things in their systems that are likely to hurt themselves, you know, in favor of our interests.
Therein lies the dilemma.
You understand? I also have an issue with how well we have done as a media in conveying some of the issues that you spoke about to the ordinary citizen, in helping them to understand how this is going to not only impact you, but how you are also impacting on climate change as well. We're talking about the fact that the Voice editorial spoke about how dirty and filthy Castries is. We spoke about people disposing bottles and
even how loud music, you know,
even appliances, you know. But every time we have a flood, every time we are affected by a natural disaster, we blame the government. But nobody thinks that that bottle that you threw in the gutter contributed and somehow, you know, to the flooding. You know, yes, climate change is playing a role in terms of the amount of rain that we're getting, the frequency of the hurricanes and the storms, but we are also contributing to the problem in
the plastics,
in the way we dispose of our garbage.
We refuse to go to the supermarket with a bag because you know the custom is that the supermarket, I'm paying for my goods, you have to put it in a plastic for me. You know, then the supermarkets offer you a $5 bag. Why should I buy a bag when, you know, you have plastic? Put it, double up the bag. What do we do with those plastic bags? You know, we dump them in the garbage. So we send them, you know, to the garbage dump. It stays there. You know, whatever is done is recycled within the garbage. But then like you said, what about those of us who just throw it outside? You know, we purchase something, we take the thing, we drop the garbage. There was something in the news in some European country. They wanted to test and to show the lesson of the effect of dumping plastic on the waters. And they took a dragnet, a fish dragnet, from one side of that very huge harbor, and we went right across. And in just one drag, which was done on TV, they pulled up so much plastic, and they pulled up fish, which the plastic had stuck in their gulls. And just in that one live broadcast, many people were able to see the effect of leaving a plastic bag by the beach. You know, we would say, I mean, they step people cleaning there.
Yeah, but I would like us to get to that point where our reporters are able to do stories like that, that not just, you know, point to the problem, but help effect change, you know, change attitudes and contribute, you know, to a solution, you know, of the problem. You know,
I
but
think a new one, and you know, I'm one who always, you know, complains and sees the things that needs to be done, but there are times when one has to acknowledge, and one can see without identifying, without being seen as identifying and putting anybody better than anybody else. But I take pleasure in reading the 2 columns in The Voice. There is the one by Rochelle Gonzalez, Sounding Off, and Facing the Crowd, where she talks about, you know, she sounds off on issues that she wants to sound off on, issues that she knows other persons have in mind, other women, etc. Then they're Facing the Crowd, which is to get an ordinary person or somebody whose story is not known, but who has a story, as everybody does, you know, and gets it out there. Then Stan Bishop does the same thing. He has got 2 columns, If You Ask Me, where he gives you his view. You don't have to agree or disagree, but he's telling you what he thinks about the issue. And there's another one where he looks at business, business elements. And I think that creation of columns vis-a-vis simply reporting helps the reporter focus in a steady way on issues apart from meeting the quota. You know, so you know you have that column. So you have to start thinking of what's going to go into my column.
Yeah, but we run out of time. But the problem with that is that people need to read the column first of all. And we know we're not in a reading society, you know. And there was an important quote he used at the courts reading competition recently, which your brother often reminds me of, that a man who doesn't read is no better than a man who cannot read. So on that note.
But on that note, but before we go, I'd like to, folks, you see this back page of the Star today? It's got a photograph that is out of this world. It says Home of the Surprise Family, and it's a photograph of what somebody obviously believes is a home, because there's a sign which says call before enter, no answer, no entry. Now this is a house that ain't have door, you don't have a line for phone.
It looks like one of those banana sheds.
A banana shed with a ladder. It doesn't have entry or thing, but Bill Motley is the photographer. And this, you know, the photographers out there who see yourselves as just taking pictures to sell around, you know, of issues. Bill goes around and looks for the picture that will tell the 10,000 words. Last week you had one with somebody had a notice on a breadfruit in the tree. You know, you want to die, touch that. Right? And he would see those things. He had a picture of a little boy tying another little boy's lace while they were eating sweets. These are the things, these are the stories. You have your camera, and I'm seeing people are doing it now in the photo of the day. You know, the things we see, the things we need to record. I saw one where somebody lives somewhere in Viewfort, in the flight path of aircraft leaving Hewanora. and was able to arrange for a photograph to be taken of her with a plane just taken off right behind her. You know, and these are the things that we need to make use of, the preparedness of people to help us tell the story.
Yeah. Yeah, the power of the photojournalist. Like you said, it's a picture tells 1,000 words. You know,
yeah, well, this one is
amazing photographs,
10,000.
you know, in some of these newspapers, National Geographic and growing up, you know, you'd watch one photograph and without, you know, needing to read the caption of the story, you could, you know.
It tells you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Bousquet. Always a pleasure having you.
Same here.
Always a pleasure having you. Watch. Hopefully you'll join us next week for another program. This has been the Press Club. I'm Kendall Burton on behalf of my co-host, Mr. Earl Bousquet. Have yourselves a safe and enjoyable weekend.